Hi everyone, welcome back to The Feel Between. I'm Yasmine.
I'm Ahmed.
And we're excited to be here. I feel like we say this a lot, but I'm sleepy but excited. We had a really busy weekend. What did we get up to?
I drove a lot from North Carolina.
You drove all the way to North Carolina and back?
Yeah.
And you got to see so many people.
Yeah, got to see some friends, so that was nice.
You went to Bolted the bakery.
I went to my favorite bakery. I went to a lot of my favorite spots, so that was good. Yeah, it was a good trip. What about you?
Any other overall reflections? How did it feel being back?
It felt good.
That's good. That's a very deep reflection.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it was good. I went to New York City. My now brother-in-law planned a really lovely surprise engagement party for my sister.
Yeah.
And we love him. He's a good guy, so we're excited he's joining the family.
He is a good guy. Actually, I need to message them and say good job or something.
Yeah.
Because I haven't. It was a busy weekend.
Yeah, it was a busy weekend, but yeah.
But we all knew it was coming.
Right. won't hurt to message. I feel like we've maybe mentioned this before, but like my now almost brother-in-law and you have like a lot in common randomly, which is really cute.
Yeah,
including same birthday,
We're both drummers,
which is wild. Both drummers,
we
both
like horror movies.
Exactly, you got them all. Both like obscure horror movies.
Yeah,
I feel like similar senses of humor, maybe.
Yeah,
both like pretty outgoing socially.
Similar clothes.
Yeah,
Except
definitely.
He's kind of a little cooler than I am.
I wouldn't say that. I think you're both pretty cool guys. Well, he's like tatted and wears more jewelry, but you wear some jewelry. We're not tatted. They're very tatted.
I have a ring and a bracelet.
And a nose ring.
And a nose ring. Yeah,
you got three pieces of jewelry.
That sometimes. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I don't know if he actually has anything pierced, does he? I think he just wears like chain necklaces sometimes.
That's true.
Yeah. So you both have different jewelry. We'll give you both a check for that.
As far as we can tell, he has nothing.
Yeah, as far as I can see, that's a good point. I'll have to check with my sister.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, these are things that Maya and I don't necessarily have in common with our partners. Like we're not drummers and we don't, find obscure horror movies. So it's just really cute.
Yeah.
I feel like we always, I can say her name. Yeah. We always thought of ourselves as like very different growing up. And I feel like the older that we get, the more we kind of find we have in common. And it's very nice. Like, I don't think I would have said like, oh, our partners won't get along, but I never would have guessed that they'd like really get along. So that feels really lucky. And my other brother-in-law, who's already my brother-in-law, I also really like, and just in general, I know that can be like a hard thing. So I feel very grateful that we all found some nice people who get along. Yeah.
This room smells really bad.
I'm sorry.
God,
I was like hungry because I got home, and so I just ate like a little snack of 2 cheese balls and kimchi. And the kimchi was really good. It was a new brand.
I had it earlier. It's very effervescent.
It's like good, very pungent.
Like
the whole room smells like kimchi.
Yeah, jeez. It was up here for like 2 minutes, and the whole room smells like kimchi.
We can crack and open a window if you want. Sorry.
No, we can't.
We can't?
No, they have the putty on them.
Oh, even the tops?
Yeah, you can't open it.
Can't like pull it down?
No.
Damn. I guess we're stuck with this kimchi smell.
Yeah, I lit a candle, so that's fine.
Okay.
We'll see.
Someone in my classroom today finally figured out how to open the window, and I was so grateful because I was dying of heat in there.
Good job.
Well, I didn't do it. They did it, but I was grateful.
Yeah, to them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How was your weekend?
It was really lovely. It was a fun surprise. It was like a whirlwind because it was a lot of people, but it was really nice. In addition to that, I saw 2 friends who I've seen relatively recently, but maybe not for like a year or so. So it's good to catch up with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was about it.
We've been watching True Detective.
So scary. I had more nightmares last night.
Finally got you to watch it.
It's really good.
Yeah.
But it's very scary. I want to take a break and watch something chill after this. I want to watch Jin next by the Jordanian show. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to say it here so I'm held accountable. Only let me finish that episode tonight. No new episode tonight. Okay?
Uh-huh.
Promise?
That's fine. I mean, we're only like 10 minutes into the episode, so
okay.
It's pretty much an entire episode.
You're a good accountability person. You stopped this last night too, which is good. I definitely don't sleep as well when I'm not with you, which is sad. Yeah. Anyway, those are all our updates, I think. I'm trying to think if anything else is happening. No, that's really it.
Kamala Harris is in Pittsburgh, but I don't know where.
Yeah, I didn't really, there was all this like lead up, and then I don't know if you were supposed to DM.
You're supposed to get on the Telegram, but I don't have Telegram.
I have Signal and WhatsApp, and I don't want to download another thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought they would like at least post it to their stories once it became public.
Yeah, I agree. I wonder why they didn't. Maybe they're worried that they would move location, or maybe they're trying to avoid like protesters.
Who?
Like maybe Kamala Harris and the Biden administration are trying so hard to avoid Palestine protesters that like if someone were like put up the location.
I'm talking about the organizers.
Right. But I wonder if once it became too public, I don't really know what the rationale was. Yeah.
I mean, if they have a place locked down with security and stuff, they can't really just move her around.
Right. Yeah. No, I think you're right.
So,
I don't know what the logic was.
I think they just didn't do it. Yeah.
That's too bad. And there was supposed to be a ceasefire resolution at City Council today, but apparently that got pushed to next month.
Yeah.
But Durham, where we formerly lived, passed a ceasefire resolution, which is really great. A lot of good organizing happening there.
Yeah. The ceasefire, I mean, they're good. I'm never going to like push back against them, but I mean, ultimately it's just symbolic.
No, I had the same feeling this morning because I had an initial kind of rush of like, wow, that's so exciting. And it is. And I think it's important. And I think it's good to like stand up. But also, yeah, it is depressing to know that every city in this country could call for ceasefire and the federal government still is obligated to do nothing.
I guess you could say that, you know, if enough big cities do it, then you know, congressional leadership will take notice, or federal or whatever.
Yeah.
There's already polling around
right.
this
But
stuff,
I think that's a good
generally most people are in favor of a ceasefire.
I think it's a good point though. The more cities that like officially have called for it, that means that local reps got enough pressure, and that means that hopefully then they like, I mean, yeah, it's not enough, it's not direct enough, but it's something, it's a tool that people have.
Yeah, but this is one of those things where the federal government doesn't really have time to sit around and watch each city pass a ceasefire resolution over the course. I mean, it's maybe 100 cities now that have done it.
Oh, is it that many?
Probably
I don't think
not even,
so.
Probably not even that many, but it's been almost 6 months.
I know, but I think that the more people who do it, the hope is. But yeah, you're definitely right. It's not enough.
There's not enough time to sit around and watch everyone pass a ceasefire resolution. I think it's great. Like again, I'm not trying to
I
be
feel
overly
you.
pessimistic,
Yeah.
but it's, you know, it is largely a symbolic thing, which has its, you know, limited benefits.
I think it's just a handful of cities, though. I don't think it's that many.
I think it's at least 50.
I'm trying to find a number, but Chicago's the largest city. Oh, yeah, you're right. You're totally right. Nearly 50 cities. The largest being Chicago. Other large cities include San Francisco, Minneapolis, Detroit. So, no New York yet. It won't pass in New York, but
yeah.
Yeah. Well, should we get into it? Any other life updates before we get into our items for today?
No life updates.
Okay. Do you want to start or should I start?
I don't have anything.
Whoa, this is unheard of. It's all of my items.
Yeah, this is a you episode. I didn't.
Oh my gosh, so much pressure.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes.
I think I can handle it, but you are like the items king. Okay, well, mine are kind of serious. I should have prepped some other ones.
That's fine.
Okay. Oh man, I don't know which. I'm gonna go in order of like pretty depressing to like we can make some jokes about it at the end. So we'll just rip off the Band-Aid with pretty depressing.
We'll see. Seems like it's gonna be important.
Oh yeah, we'll see. So there's just this article I came across that I found super, super depressing, but interesting, but really mostly just depressing. It was actually a post on Middle East Eye about an article. So this is published in Haaretz, but it was published in the Hebrew version, not the English. And it was a good reality check for me. I know that Haaretz is still a shit paper, but like in the beginning of the conflict, I was seeing all this kind of like commentary on how like, wow, it's crazy that like things are getting published in Haaretz that are not getting published, which is like Israel's kind of equivalent to the Times, like a center left paper, allegedly. Things are getting published in Haaretz that aren't getting published in the Times. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I like would check media coverage because I was curious. But it seems like there's also a distinct difference between like what they're publishing in English, which kind of makes sense, and what they're publishing in Hebrew.
Yep.
But this was a really, really awful article that was published recently. And it was essentially just about I'll read the kind of description here. It's a lifestyle cooking feature about Israeli soldiers finding and cooking with ingredients in the kitchens of Gazans who had to flee their homes. So the whole thing is just pictures of like Israeli soldiers in homes that were abandoned by Palestinians who had to flee because of Israeli bombardment. And it's just bizarre, like how kind of naturalized it is. And like, I mean, I'm relying on other people obviously for translations, but here are some kind of excerpts. There's mixed feelings for sure because I'm using their tools in their house. But on the other hand, we have to eat. You know, this is while like people in Palestine are literally being starved as a tool of genocide. Our instincts
there are reports of people, I think I mentioned this last time, but in Rafah eating grass and drinking dirty water.
Yeah, our instincts and our wish to eat supersede this. It's important to clarify that these are abandoned houses, some of which are destroyed or are planned to be destroyed, and this is how we fight in Gaza. So it's like a really, really, and the feature was called Battle Meal. Really blatant, just kind of like genocidal tactics that are being like put in like a lifestyle format of like a cooking show almost. One of the soldiers says, the Gazan kitchen is rich in spices. In every house you find a lot of mixed spices like you find in shops. There's a lot of lentils, so we did a lot of cooking with lentils. In every house we were in, there were olives that they made, which we tasted. And it's just like, I don't know, there's something also really creepy about the like using something as specific to Palestinians as like olive oil that's so tied to the land. And like so many Palestinians have all these stories about like generations of families harvesting olives and creating olive oil. And that, again, that being kind of like spun into this weird like, oh, we're coming across different brand varieties. And it's like, because you fucking like kicked individually people off their land and out of their homes. The whole thing was just really creepy.
Yeah. I think it evidences what we've talked about before, where not only is it ostensibly, you know, just a revenge campaign to kill as many people as possible and to clear out Gaza so that Israel can, you know, take control of the land. That's not enough, but they actually do relish humiliating people after they've maimed them or murdered them. And I think part of this is what makes up a lot of South Africa's case in the ICJ. So I don't know if it's mentioned in the article that you have brought up, but I don't know if you saw a while back. There's a lot of, you know, Israeli soldiers on TikTok. They'll go into homes and they've set up. There was one in particular where they set up a bakery or pizza like restaurant
in like a former home.
In a home. Yeah. Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, I mean, they like set it up and they like took TikToks and they were pretending like they were filling orders or whatever and made a big show of it. Like it was supposed to be funny or whatever that they were doing that.
But clearly kind of showing their plans for conquest, like taking over.
Yeah. Or that, you know, they're just eagerly building into, you know, I don't know. I guess it's like the juxtaposition of them just going in and like somewhere that they've totally destroyed and
also them like being full and eating. Yeah, exactly. The eating thing is particularly dark.
The other thing they're doing is just going in and like posing with pictures of women's lingerie that they find in homes. So they'll pull out like you know, and this has happened a lot where they'll like pull out a night slip or, you know, like some like red lingerie and they'll like hold it up and
very
be like
dehumanizing.
Yeah.
In like a weird sexual way.
And I'm not really sure what the point of that is supposed to be. It is
maybe embarrassment. I feel like there's so many like kind of Islamophobically tinged ideas that like women who sometimes are covered, which obviously is a diversity of dress. Yeah. But like don't have intimate lives. I don't know. It's like it's supposed to be embarrassing somehow to show that they like had.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, they're on one hand supposed to be saying like it's almost like they're doing the thing that they accuse Muslim men of doing, where they are shaming a woman for having this thing,
a body.
That's
yeah.
Like, she was like, oh, look at this, haha. Like, isn't this like weird? But I guess in reality, if you are taking a second to think about it, it's this is a Palestinian woman who was clearly like a sexual being in some way.
It's a digression, but I always thought this made so much sense, but it hit me as kind of jarring when I first went to Morocco, which is obviously a very different context and place. But in like the old Medina, when there are, you know, like shops, like everything's very like open and oriented towards the street, and a very common stall you'll see are hijabs and lingerie. It's just like a shop for women. Like there's no embarrassment. It's just like where women go to buy stuff that they use for themselves. Like, it's not uncommon. Yeah. Anyway.
So yeah, that's a trend. What else does the article say?
Oh, that's it. I mean, so I'm relying on like translations on Reddit. Like, I can't read the Hebrew, obviously. So yeah, that's just kind of the gist of what I gathered from this and other commentary on it.
Yeah, I will say that is a pattern, right? Like, Haaretz will definitely publish some other things in Hebrew that, you know, that don't get discussed as much because they are published in Hebrew. Netanyahu will do the same thing, right? Like, so he'll speak in English and say one thing to an audience where he's like, we don't want to ethnically cleanse Gaza. And then in Hebrew, he'll give a speech to his supporters and be like, we're not going to stop until we have total destruction, or, you know, we'll never allow a two-state solution, you know, just... And I guess it just slows down the coverage pretty greatly, but...
It shouldn't, but yeah, I guess that's the idea.
Yeah.
So this was initially commented on by The Forward, which is a pretty progressive Jewish magazine. I think that they have mixed coverage of this genocide/conflict. They have had progressive coverage of some things in the past. Full disclosure, I've published in The Forward before, but they had a kind of coverage of this particular thing that was then picked up by the Middle East Eye. So there's a live action simulation game allowing Israelis to role play as Israeli agents fighting in Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital. And it's called Fauda Explosive Lab. And it's like an escape room basically in Tel Aviv, based on the controversial Israeli Netflix show Fauda, which I remember there being some commentary about, but I never actually watched myself or like really followed very closely. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's, you know, kind of playing on this, I guess, global trend of people in escape rooms. But something that's really interesting is that it's rigged so that the Israelis never lose. So it's meant to be kind of cathartic. And it's like a fictional version of the hospital's emergency room. The players use pretend guns to shoot at fake Palestinian fighters, attacking them through the windows. And then there's a tunnel below the pretend hospital where they're supposed to neutralize a chemical bomb. So many things here. One, just kind of really weird gamification of what is like an ongoing genocide. Two, it's just really interesting because, I mean, the Al-Shifa hospital was such a awful, awful massacre. And it's so interesting that in this rewrite, I mean, it makes sense, but it is fascinating that in this kind of Orwellian rewrite, like, there is a bomb about to go off and the Israelis are the victims that they have. It's bizarre and kind of fascinating the way that this game is being used to kind of like rewrite, not even history. I mean, this was just like a month ago or something, like really recent events.
Yeah, and also who's doing escape rooms? It's young people.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it seems fucking stupid. Like, I don't know. Like, it really is just them constructing their own reality, which they do on an even larger scale, right? Like, we're at the 6th Hamas headquarters underground now, and they're saying it's under the UN, under the UNRWA headquarters. So
just keep on moving it to wherever they're bombing.
Yeah, there's like, this is it. We found the main headquarters, and they've done that. You know, Al-Ahli, Al-Shifa, and now UNRWA, and there've been like a couple others that I'm just not remembering, but yeah.
All right, those were the shorter items. I've got a longer item for you.
Yeah.
So this is a New York Times. Did you have anything else to say about that, by the way?
No.
This is a Times article that was published on the 15th, so just 5 days ago from when we're recording this. And it's called California's Push for Ethnic Studies Runs into the Israel-Hamas War. And I found this article really interesting because, I mean, it kind of deals with like the U.S. context of how educators are handling talking about this issue. But also because I feel like, in my opinion, the article like attempted to kind of show both sides, but then had a really clear slant. So I'll just read sections to you and we can kind of like talk about it. But it starts off by kind of giving an overview that by 2025, California has like set goals that the state's public high schools all have to teach ethnic studies as a subject. And for those who aren't familiar, California has really been kind of like on the vanguard of ethnic studies historically. So there were huge protests at, I think it was San Francisco State University in the 60s and 70s that established a lot of now what are commonly taught across universities as like valid subjects. So there were like people who were like, hey, I really want to learn about African American history in college. And like a lot of that is owed to protests that happened in California's university system. Latino studies, really any kind of what we think of now as ethnic studies, which is really just American history, wasn't being taught in standardized courses in the US, really. I mean, there were pioneers like Zinn, like there were people who were kind of doing that work, but it wasn't like a common thing. Like it was pretty subversive to do. And so, yeah, California was really important in shifting that. And so it's not surprising that they're a little bit ahead of the curve and now kind of trying to mandate it, or mandating it, in fact, for their high schools. So the article says, for policymakers, a goal is to give California students, 80% of whom are non-white, the opportunity to study a diverse array of cultures. Research has shown that ethnic studies classes can raise grades and attendance for teenagers at a risk of dropping out. But even in a liberal state like California, scholars, parents, and educators have found themselves at odds over how to adapt the college-level academic discipline for high school students, especially because of its strong views on race and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And then the article says, the name ethnic studies might bring to mind a broad exploration of how ethnicity and race shape the human experience, but the discipline as taught in universities is narrower and more ideological. So by narrower and more ideological, I think what they mean is concern with matrices of power, which is like something that good scholarship should be concerned with. But the article goes on to sort of say more or less explicitly, essentially, that it is a problem that the discipline as a whole is like fundamentally anti-Zionist. And does that mean that it is therefore anti-Semitic? And is that appropriate for quote unquote ethnic studies? Yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. I can think of more, but I'll kind of get your initial thoughts.
Wait, so who's concerned about the curriculum?
Parents.
Oh.
Yeah. It's always parents.
Like all parents?
No. I'm sure just some.
Like a parent group?
Not even a parent group that they mention, at least, so that might be a case. It seems like there are educators who are afraid to talk about it. There might be some educators who are also not comfortable with the framing, high school educators, but it seems like the kind of idea is that mostly there's worry that parents will kind of protest and be like, hey, I don't want my kids learning this, or this isn't appropriate for a high school level, or it's just not an appropriate take.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say about that other than it just seems stupid. Is this all school districts across the state or just...
Across the state, yeah.
I wonder if it's the pushback is coming from richer school districts.
Maybe, yeah. And it's interesting because like the goal is by 2025, so they still have a year, but that's like a pretty massive policy change. I
feel like the only parents who really get involved in that sort of shit are like upper middle class parents who just have nothing better to do. And
parents who obviously like have Zionist sympathies. But California's been an interesting kind of testing ground for this kind of stuff, and it does sort of show like fractures within communities also. So they were also kind of ahead of the curve because they have such a huge Asian American population in terms of talking about, like, for example, casteism and issues of caste within South Asian American communities. And they got huge pushback from Hindu lobbies to the fact that they actually caved and revised some of their curriculum. So it's just kind of an interesting conversation that I think is a little ahead of the curve because obviously, like, ethnic studies is not a mandatory subject in most of this country. But, I mean, the way that they kind of set the conversation that has played out nationally for universities, I do think it's kind of interesting to watch on a high school level and see what happens. And then part of the argument here is like, hey, well, half of Israeli Jews are Mizrahi. And I think this again gets at the kind of, meaning that they are of non-European descent. I mean, these terms are complicated. I think Mizrahi can mean a lot of different things, or Ashkenazi. Ashkenazi versus Mizrahi, but like the idea that there have been Jews in the Middle East, which there absolutely have been. There actually haven't been that many Jews historically in what is now Palestine. There were Jewish populations in Egypt, what is now Egypt. There were large Jewish populations, what is now Morocco. And I think that it is important to learn about those histories, and they are understudied. I don't think that being anti-Zionist in any way precludes you from learning about those histories. In fact, I've always had an interest in thinking, not always, but for a long time, I've had an interest in thinking about Jewish history in the Middle East, particularly in Morocco, and sort of how that's tied into the history of Al-Andalus and the like expulsion of Jews and Muslims from Al-Andalus and communities that ended up in North Africa. Yeah, none of that prevents you from kind of talking about Zionism.
But Zionism is a revisionist project.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
They would, I mean, yeah, they wouldn't want people necessarily, like, in their minds, the Israeli state has just like always existed, it seems like. I don't know. Or, but so I'm confused about the story. Is it Zionist parents who are upset about this ethnic studies curriculum?
Who are upset about the anti-Zionist slant of ethnic studies curricula.
And the anti-Zionist slant is what exactly?
That, one, it's wrong to talk about anti-Zionism in this context because it's anti-Semitic. And two, that Jews are a racial group and they should be included in the curricula, or they're a racialized group and they should be included in the curricula, and that talking about Zionism as a matrix of oppression is like, anti-Semitic and not including Jews.
So in the ethnic studies curriculum, the instructor would say that Zionism is bad, or that...
Yeah, I mean, certainly on a college level, yeah. I guess that's the debate, is that going to happen on a high school level?
Yeah.
So we've got, like, example, a professor here who's quoted, an ethnic studies scholar at the University of California, Riverside, which has actually pretty good departments for this kind of thing, and says the discipline is a critical analysis of the way power works in societies. I'll keep on reading. For these reasons, several ethnic studies scholars said in interviews the Palestinian cause should be included in high school classes. It was important, they said, to stand in solidarity with Palestinian American students. I mean, also thinking about the history of, like, people who advocated for ethnic studies curricula on a college level, there was huge solidarity between, for example, like Black empowerment movements and Asian empowerment movements and Palestinian empowerment and thinking about Palestinian liberation. Like, that's historically always been the case of the kind of foundation of the discipline. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yeah, it's a valid critique if you think that talking about Zionism in a negative way is bad. But I think it's just interesting the way that they, like, immediately equate that with anti-Semitism, and also I just like the accusation of bias and this kind of idea that, like, it's not factual. Yeah, it's just kind of fascinating to see that kind of play out on a high school level.
Yeah.
So with many districts already offering the subject and teachers exercising autonomy in their approach, there's been no shortage of flashpoints. Last spring, the school board in Santa Ana Unified in Orange County approved the 10th grade ethnic studies class that covers the displacement of Native American tribes, gentrification in American cities, and early 20th century Russian pogroms of Jews. But the syllabus veers from the state framework by including Israel's treatment of Palestinians in a unit on colonialism. In September, the Anti-Defamation League and several other Jewish groups sued the district on procedural grounds to prevent that material from being taught. A spokesperson for the district said he could not comment on ongoing litigation, but noted that the course has not been offered and the content was still being finalized.
Yeah, wow.
It's also kind of crazy, and I've heard this even from folks I know who are kind of like liberal Zionists. Like, early Zionist colonists called themselves colonists. Like, they used the word themselves. They understood what they were doing as a colonial project. So to kind of act like this is some kind of, like, leftist, liberal, progressive bullshit spin makes no sense.
Yeah. Yeah, you can read letters, like, from the 1800s saying, like, oh, we must colonize the land of Palestine, and they refer to it as Palestine. It should concern parents that so much is being done and so much money is being spent to control what their kids can learn on behalf of a foreign country. That to me is crazy and seems at odds with the general American take that or of, like, liberty and individual erudition and, like, just freedom in general. Like, your freedom to learn history is limited by and on behalf of a foreign government. But
yeah, agreed. And I really hope to see, because I feel like we talked about this before on the podcast, but I feel like for a while, this is interesting Freudian slip, for a while in the US, the right had kind of a chokehold on, like, this idea of free speech as, like, a really important issue. And I think it's really important for the left right now to be like, hey, like, free speech, right, of, like, educators to, like, create balanced but also, like, deep and meaningful resources for their students to explore complicated issues. Like it's just so important not to take that away or flatten it. And it really, if it is something that people sincerely care about, it should go for both sides.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. It's probably going to be a long time before it even gets to any other states. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it's important for them to figure out here in California, like with the year they have left to implement it. But yeah, true.
I wonder if it'll be a Supreme Court case at some point.
Could be. Yeah. We had a Middle East unit in my high school, and it was super helpful. I learned a lot from it.
Really?
Yeah, it was actually it wasn't as bad as you would have thought, but I've stayed in touch with people who are still affiliated with the high school, and I think it is a flashpoint every couple of years. I bet it was crazy this year. Yeah.
Yeah. I took AP history, and I remember we spent a week on like the JFK assassination, and our teacher was really into the magic bullet theory. Or what is it? Magic bullet's a blender.
No, I don't. I didn't even catch that, but you're right, it is. No, people are really into JFK assassination.
Is it called the magic bullet after the JFK assassination?
I can look. I don't know. JFK assassination theory.
Type in magic bullet JFK.
Okay. Magic bullet.
Did they name the blender after the...
That would be kind of fucked up. Magic bullet theory.
Did they name the blender after
the single bullet theory, also known as the magic bullet theory? Yeah, maybe.
It's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should start an exclusively blender-based conspiracy theory. You know,
it seems offensive to the surviving relatives that
there's a thing called the magic bullet. Yeah, I guess so.
And it was all over TV. I don't know if you remember, like the as seen on TV commercials, but
I don't. But I am familiar with the magic bullet.
Onions on it and stuff.
Yeah, it seems really effective.
That's crazy.
That is crazy. I feel like we really uncovered something here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough news. How have you been feeling?
In terms of Palestine, in terms of life, everything?
I mean, it's, yeah.
Such a big question.
It is a big question.
I feel like this month, I've generally
You gotta hold the microphone.
Oh, sorry. I feel like this month, generally...
You gotta hold the microphone.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Now I feel frustrated. No, this month, I've felt pretty good.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, all things considered, I think that it's easy to feel down with the news, obviously. In my personal life, I'm feeling more and more rooted in the city that we live in, more like we have community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been enjoying doing small things with you. We've only done it a couple times, but it's been really nice. We've been trying to spend our Saturdays like doing a little creative work, and that's been a really lovely touch point for my weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Had a lovely Valentine's Day with you. So yeah, I think generally feeling decent, all things considered.
Yeah.
How about you?
Good. I mean, okay. I think the depression and despair over stuff kind of comes and goes in waves.
Yeah, it seems to be that way for you.
Yeah. You kind of are able to kind of hold it together for a little while, but then...
kind of like unleashes kind of, or...
Yeah.
Is that always true for you, though? I feel...
What do you mean?
Like, I feel like you're so good at trying so hard that sometimes it just kind of breaks. I think it's worse.
Think it's more severe now.
Yeah, I think it's more severe given current events, but I feel like it always exists to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. I think before, if I like fell off of my routine or something, I would kind of maybe take a day or two to kind of collect myself. But yeah, I don't know. Like every day you kind of see the worst thing you've ever seen. So it's kind of how it is. I don't think people were meant to live this way, obviously. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think especially if you, I don't know if this is going to make sense or if I'm saying it in the right way, but if you already are prone to depression and then there is such a legitimately awful event, that sounds hard to parse out and also probably not even possible to parse out. Like what is there to parse?
I've been thinking about this because I actually canceled my therapy appointment this week, but I was like, I haven't talked about it in there. I mean, I've mentioned it.
Really?
Obviously.
You should. I have.
But why? You know, it just kind of seems annoying because the framework for therapy in the U.S. is let's get you to feel better so that you can, you know, function at work or whatever. And I'm like, I shouldn't really.
I think therapy is a little bit what you make of it.
I think, no, I think like, I'm not trying to feel better. That's the thing, is I don't think, honestly, like, I think everyone should feel bad right now. Like,
yeah, I know that's your operating.
You know, everyone should be looking at this and be like, wow, this is horrible. But the awful thing is that we kind of live in a system that makes you have to kind of keep going.
But you also, as an individual, have days where you have good days, and I don't think you should feel bad for that. Like, you have days that you seem more alive than other days, you know?
Yeah, but it's like always in the
of
back
course.
Of your head.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's fine. But what I'm saying is I'm not over here trying to do therapy and be like, I'm really sad about what's going on. And I'm not faulting anyone who is, like, but I'm just saying for me, like, I don't find that particularly helpful, and it's not something I really want. Like, I don't want to have to pay someone, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's entirely a personal preference. I do think if it's something that's affecting you a lot psychologically, which it obviously is, I don't think it's a bad thing to include that in the picture of like how you are operating. And it's not that you're trying to get away. I think it's all about how you frame it, and it's a two-way process, right? You're not just receiving guidance from someone, you're also like being an active participant and saying, this is what I want out of it. And I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just thinking for other people. Like, I don't know, when I've brought it up, it's been like, hey, like, this is affecting my psyche a lot. Trying to think about like ways that I can feel more engaged and like that I can try and like be actually helpful. And even if it's on a small scale, you know, yeah, I think it's kind of like it's only a tool. It's not a solution, but it's only a tool if you use it as a tool. You know what I mean?
But I'm just having a hard time thinking about like, what is my therapist going to tell me that I need to do to stay engaged that I don't already know?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, for example, we had a good conversation about like echo chambers, which I know there are anyway, obviously. But it was just like, yeah, like, I'm not crazy. There are echo chambers. Like, people are, I don't know. I don't think it's a bad thing to just like, I don't think you're saying it's a bad thing, to be fair. But I guess just speaking for myself, I've found that helpful. It's not like something I talk about every appointment. I agree. Yeah. Like, for me, that would be like, well, nothing is changing within the space of just the two of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. But I think, I don't know, it's tricky also because I feel like it's important to take ownership of, I think you never want it to be, and it would almost be a disservice to the atrocity to be like, to not also own your own personal ups and downs. Like, I think it's tricky because there is overlap, but then there also is like sometimes something goes wrong and you just have a bad day, and then it's a compounding effect because then it's easier to like lean into like the awfulness. Does that make sense?
Like, you're saying if you just, aside from what's going on, you just have a bad day, like at work, or you just let other things fall
then
apart,
it's easier to like compound into like the despair.
Blaming it on like, oh, well, it's because
I don't. But I wouldn't go that far. It sounds too harsh because the truth is that is always happening. But I guess I'm saying then you're more likely to tap into like the nihilistic despair of the like atrocity than you are if you're not already kind of having a bad day.
Despair is different than nihilistic despair.
That's fair. That's a fair distinction.
I think it's fair to despair, and we should. And I even understand nihilism to a certain extent. Like, I mean, I guess
I think it's a huge disservice to people on the ground.
Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by nihilism. I guess, yeah, like, you shouldn't just be like, well, I'm going to give up because
they're all going to die anyway. I mean, how awful. Yeah.
You can have that analysis and you say like, oh, this is what Israel is trying to do for sure. And everyone's letting them do it. But I'm going to try to do everything within my power, however weak, to like contribute toward that not happening. So I guess that's where I'm at. But like, yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying is like with the therapy stuff, like I personally do not feel like it's helpful for me to seek ways to alleviate my own personal despair at the situation, because this is an awful situation and I don't see another way other than or another way to like feel other than, you know, despair or sadness or.
No, I think that's a fair take, but I do think there is something to thinking about, like being self-aware of like, hey, the days that I'm home and not interacting with people are worse, and like, am I better for the world for those days? Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
No, I think that's true. I think there's an important
because that's more about you than it is about Palestine. You know what I mean? But it's not an either or.
What do you mean it's more about me then?
Like, it is both, because there is always that like profound sense of disconnect and like alienation, I think, especially for you and many others. But it's not like, yeah, I don't think you want to, like, in a way, I think you can almost bear the risk, not you personally, but like if you were to maybe I'm off base here, but I think what I meant to say is that I think if you were to say like, I feel despair at this and I don't want it alleviated, I think you bear the risk of maybe not like acknowledging for the fact that other factors might also be contributing to that despair, and in a way you make it less about Palestine than it should be, if that makes sense. Or you're kind of using Palestine to be like, this is why I feel despair, and not like, oh, there's also other factors why I'm feeling this more on some days than others. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think if you're generally a thoughtful, self-aware person, you can kind of distinguish your emotions and
that's a good
general
point.
lackadaisical feeling from like, oh, I'm actually thinking about this all the time.
Yeah,
and
no, that's a good point.
The, you know, foremost thought in my head, and when I'm typing emails, it's what I think about. When I'm like watching TV or whatever, it's what I think about. So I think only the person, you know, the individual truly knows. That said, I do agree with you that I think it's important that no matter how you feel, like you should be seeking out other people who feel the same way and doing something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think, I mean, we've talked about this too together. It's like a fine line, but I think it is, you don't want to like put too many resources into it, but I think it is helpful to an extent to have community spaces to process the grief. Like, it's tricky because you don't want it to be like, oh, about our grief here in the US when there are people who are like, you know, being killed and starved to death. It's not like, you know, you don't want to have too many like art spaces that aren't also donations or whatever, or like calls to action. But I think that solidarity is really powerful, and it's also like a good way to prevent those feelings of like more nihilistic brands of despair. And so even if community just means like a couple of people who are like as plugged in as you are and like feeling the way you are, I think that's really important and valuable and good to hold up. And I think that's something we both, you know, definitely work at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
Don't despair. Sending love.
Or do, but, you know, do it with other people.
Yeah, that's a good, oh, that's a really beautiful way to put it. I like that.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
Bye.